All right, this is a donor experience review of Washington Wildlife and Recreation Coalition. Um, First off, I'll kind of state the obvious. The design of this site is absolutely gorgeous. So clearly, I'm not going to have any qualms with this amazing photography, this great branding, all of their typography works. I mean, everything from a design perspective, from a visual aesthetic perspective, absolutely works and is more than pulling its weight. So excellent job with that. So a lot of this commentary isn't necessarily going to be about the presentation necessarily. It's going to really be more about the content and how it's structured and really how they're telling the story of their organization, specifically the problem their organization is solving and why they need donors' help. So let's just go ahead and jump in here. So we've got the homepage. Again, absolutely beautiful. This photography is outstanding. Really flows well. I mean, you can get to the bottom and it's like your eyes never kind of jump the track. The problem is, if I'm putting myself through kind of the stranger from outer space test of where I'm just kind of dropped into your website, not really knowing much, if anything, about you, can I scroll your homepage and know what you do, or even better, why you do it? I can't say that I can. It's almost like this page is it's like it has too much brevity for its own good, in my opinion, in that, of course, you don't want massive paragraphs of text, especially on your homepage. Attention is a currency, and we don't want to, ask too much of visitors before giving something back. But I think also having too little content buries the lead, in that you don't really give people a hook. You don't give them a motivation to explore further other than the motivation they walked in the door with. So if I'm just kind of a casual observer, this homepage really hasn't given me more reasons to explore further. It's probably just confirmed what I already knew, but it really hasn't kind of moved the ball down the field any further. Now, from my perspective, just personally, granted, I only know about this organization with regard to the projects they've done, but I think that kind of puts me in a bit of a unique spot if I'm potentially a donor, because I utilize one of their projects about 5 times a week. There's an amazing Rails to Trails project that's just right down the street from me. That's incredible, and it's one of their projects. So I'm not completely unaware of what they do, but at the same time, I'm also by no means an expert, and I really can't actually speak intelligently with how a lot of this works. So when I didn't see a lot of that information on the homepage, I kind of tripped over that a bit. So let's get down into the specifics here. So this top header portion of the page, we've got unifying voices for Washington's great outdoors. I mean, that's beautiful prose. That's a beautiful font, but I don't know what it means. I don't know why voices need to be unified. I don't know why that's a good thing. I don't know if voices are unified, what's different. And so I'm left kind of scratching my head or looking at this like, oh, that's nice. And then I scroll down, but then immediately thereafter, my confusion isn't paid off. That, of course, you want to promote your events, but wait a minute, what do you do? Before I'm thinking about going to your event or learning more about it, again, if I'm a stranger dropped out of space, where's the supporting information for here? So if I click learn more, granted, I can learn more, but that jumps me off the homepage. And so anyway, one exercise I like to do with clients is to have them come up with what's the one sentence that you would like people to know about you after they learn about you, specifically after they learn about you through interacting with your website. We're not trying to get anyone to memorize, paragraphs of text or know the 7 things you've done in the last 18 months. It's like, what one sentence do you want people to go away with? And specifically, that one sentence is what's most interesting about you. And that isn't necessarily what you do. It's usually the change you create. So what's the one sentence about the change that you create in the world that you want people to walk away from your homepage with? And do people actually do that? Can you take a test subject, put them in front of your site, have them scroll your homepage and say, okay, summarize this organization in one sentence. Does their sentence match yours? And if not, why not? And what can you add to get that to match? So, it's a matter of thinking, very, very basic level, very headline, and not necessarily getting into the details, but giving people enough information so where they can kind of get the gist. They can get the thesis statement of your organization. And that's just, for me, that's missing on this homepage. So the way that I would have constructed this, if it were me, I would have made this a bit more descriptive, specifically talking about impact. In the headline here, I'd invite people to learn more, which would take them down the page, and then I'd unfold the narrative further, where I'd have kind of a medium summary here, and still not a ton of text, but at least enough to where people could actually know what it is you do and why and how things are different because you're doing it. And then I'd actually have them explore a level deeper underneath that, and actually put the rubber to the road of talk about instead of having all these project links here, maybe have one kind of example project where I can kind of see what you do in context instead of having to infer it from what you're telling me. Plus also, I'd have the language of the homepage a little bit, frankly, a little bit more salesy, of where I'd be talking far more about benefits than I'd be talking about features. So I'd be talking about what these things actually do. I wouldn't talk about how many acres of land were saved. I would have talked about the impact those saved acres created. Like, is there more habitat for animals? If so, what does that do? Are there 35 miles of trails? Great. How many people use those trails? What's different now? And so this is going to be kind of a drum I'm going to beat through this entire video of, like a lot of sites, this is beautiful, but to me, it's not really saying anything. I'm sure, I know that there's a compelling story under this, and the way the website's designed, it makes me work for that story, that I would much rather have your visitors not have to work to hear what your amazing story is. Another exercise I do with clients quite often is to kind of imagine themselves at a dinner party, and they are talking with a stranger and telling them, and of course everyone asks what the other person does. When you explain your organization, what sort of points make the other person lean in and kind of say, oh, really? Tell me more. Capturing those kind of moments, those kinds of like interest hooks are huge, because those are your headlines. Those are the things that, it's the exact same as in a conversation as it is on a website. A click to a deeper page is an intent of tell me more. And so in order to invite those clicks, we want to identify what those tell me more things are, and we want to present them as clearly as we can and prominently as we can. Again, we don't want to bury what's interesting in the 7th paragraph of a 3rd level subpage. We want to surface those things and make them front and center so that people can not only understand what we do very, very quickly, but more importantly, again, understand the impact. Because as a donor, that's the main thing I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about what problem are you solving? I'm concerned about how solvable is it? I'm concerned about how well you're solving it. And mostly, I want to know why you need my help and how my help will actually be used. I want to be able to kind of vicariously imagine myself in a scenario where I've given you a donation, and I can, for myself, adequately define what's different now, what's actually changed. And so looking at the content of home pages especially, that's really, really important. So, okay. So that's enough for the homepage. I think that this needs another pass to really get into more summary information and to really surface the things that are interesting. Like one of the things that's really interesting are these projects in your community. And granted, you have to click into it. And I don't know if there's supposed to be projects listed here and I'm blocking you from knowing my location, which in that case, I would imagine that's a decision most people would make. I don't know how many people get that warning of, hey, we'd like to know where you are. And people just say, oh, sure. I would imagine a lot of people say no. So if that's the case, I would plan for that. But clicking into this, it's interesting. You've got this interactive map, and you can actually look at the projects per county here. And this takes a minute to actually load, and I don't know why. But it takes me a couple tries. There it is. So at first blush, it looks like that doesn't actually work. So to people without much attention span, I might be tempted to bounce off of this. But it's, probably, I'm assuming it's making a database call. So on the backside, is there a way to optimize this to make it go faster? Because when I click on these, it looks like it doesn't work. Or at least it often doesn't work. Now it's going faster on some of them, but not others. So anyway, something to think about. That if I live in Douglas County and this is the first thing I click on and I only click once, it looks like this is broken. And the worst part about this is really interesting data of where this gets to what I was talking about. This connects the dots of where I can see things that I drive by or use or I've seen in my local community. And it's like, oh, you did that? That's huge. And so the fact that this is kind of buried and makes me work for it. Boy, I would sure love to see this surfaced, and I'd sure love to see this on the homepage of a really easy way. Put that interactive map on the homepage. If you can, make it load faster so that people can really connect the dots more easily, because people will understand you through the work that you do, and especially if that work is presented as in terms of deltas, in terms of the change that's actually created from that work. So, okay, I've already said that a bunch of times. So, okay, looking through the rest of the site, like if we go back to the homepage here and let's actually click on one of these projects. So if I'm scrolling down the page and I want to look at Black River Ranch, and I've got this great photo here. That's fantastic. Beautiful. But then I hit a whole bunch of text. And for me, this is kind of like slamming on the brakes. Wait a minute. I had this great visual experience, and now I've got this paragraph where there's a lot of sentences here and a lot of the level of complexity that I have to wade through to kind of get the gist. Again, I can read through this and understand it, but where's the reason to? Where's my motivation? Like if I really want to understand what you did, why not just summarize it for me? And these quick facts over here seem like they would do that, but still, I mean, yeah, I can see how much it was. I can see, where it was, but this doesn't, I'm sure this is vital data, and I'm not trying to say this isn't worthwhile, but to me, this isn't pulling much weight. And so I would just love to see, just give me the gist. Again, what's the one sentence you'd like me to know about this project? Tell it to me. Put it right here as a headline of, again, the dinner party example. Talking to this person you just met. Hey, we just completed this project. Oh, really? What happened? Well, what's the one sentence that you know is going to pique their interest? Put that here. So working to really surface these points and really working to connect the dots for me and not require me to connect the dots, being more active instead of passive when it comes to your communication will tell a much stronger story. And as things are, trying to understand the story of what you do is disjointed. I'm not going through it in order. I'm having to learn little bits and then backfill and then click over here and, oh, wait a minute, I thought this was this, but now it's that. Oh, wait, what's the difference between the coalition and the fund. And so, there's a lot of things to understand, but I don't feel like I'm being led through that process in order. I feel like I'm just kind of gathering bits and pieces as I go, and then it's up to me to actually assemble them once I have all of the pieces. So more effort made to actually tell a narrative from beginning, middle, end, and to be able to give me the highlights and allow me to drill down into kind of a medium density information, and then drill down even further into a more dense information using, graphs, charts, statistics, summary data, summary images, help me understand these things by summarizing it, and then allow me to drill down into it first. Tell me interesting facts, tell me tidbits, tell me things, again, that would pique my interest about what you're doing and help me understand what you do. So scrolling down the page, and I'm sure this is a design element across all of the projects of where you have this, slideshow here. On this page, this really isn't pulling any weight for me. I don't really understand why this picture is cut off. I don't understand why this isn't filling this whole space. I don't really know what this photo is. A caption here would make this so much more powerful, or something over to the side of saying this land was this and now it's that, or just, again, fill in the details for me. Because of all the photos here, this first one is really the only one that I like, and it's already up here. So this doesn't really appear to be doing anything new. And again, the map is great because obviously I can understand where this is, and then I can click to other projects. Great. But it's just, I kind of found myself walking away from this like I'm still not really sure I understand what this was, and what it did. I think I understand what it was. I don't think I understand what it did exactly. So throughout the site, again, working to surface those kinds of opportunities where you can fill in those blanks and connect those dots, always very, very useful. So, okay, let's go ahead and go to the take action page here. Now, again, gorgeous photography and a compelling story, but I've got a nitpicky problem with this. If I just look at your homepage, and this is my next page, and I see LWCF, what does that mean? I know I can probably figure it out by looking at the link here and then clicking into it and answering my question. The problem is my question has to be answered by reading or clicking, and so I've completely lost the emphasis of the headline. That headlines, if they're not fully understood, lose their impact, because you're not thinking about what the headline said. You're thinking about the question that headline is just created. So this might as well not even be here if I'm wondering, what on earth does LWCF mean, and why is 84% cut bad? So if it were me, I would remove any sort of jargon, abbreviations, anything that's kind of requires a level of inside knowledge from headlines, and then instead put that in about my third paragraph of text of where someone has already gotten the gist and understand exactly what I'm talking about. That's me, but I think it makes headlines far more impactful, especially if I'm just skimming this page. Because quite honestly, if I'm looking at a page and I'm not really invested in what you're doing, and I see 4 paragraphs of text, I'm going to scroll right past it. And I'm going to read your headlines, and I'm going to infer what this page says. And so from that test, I scroll down this and I read your headlines, and I don't really understand what this page is about. I understand you want me to do things, but most importantly, I don't understand why. I don't understand what difference will create it if I do these things. And so making the headlines more action-based, specifically more action result of do this, that will happen. Explain to me break these 4 paragraphs of text down to a single sentence and tell me what you're saying. Tell me what you want me to do, and basically convince me why. Convince me why I should do that. That if I take action on your part, that action has to compete with every other action I could take. Why should I pick this? Why you? Why this? Why now? Answer those questions. And so those are, thinking about kind of normal confusion or resistance people would have to doing things. Just spell it out. Give me a reason. And again, my biggest comment about this site is that it really isn't giving me motivation. It really isn't inspiring me to act. I could, skim this entire site and look like, oh, well, that's an interesting organization, but then just leave. Like I'm not really seeing what my place in all of this is, and I'm not really seeing how this could very well look like a problem that you're already solving with a plum. Your website is beautiful. You know what you're doing. Good for you. But I'm not really seeing a direct ask for help, and I'm not really seeing a very direct, very obvious story being told of what impact I can help create. That in terms of, I think it's really important for nonprofits to treat their donors as partners and trying to court them as partners. I'm not just saying we do this, we do that. Hey, let's both of us do this and be more inclusive, and not only tell the story of what difference will be created by donors getting involved, but really, again, phrase it as a partnership. So as far as this take action page, again, I think this could be vastly improved by just communicating more clearly. Tell me what you want and why. And do it without making me read. Do it in your headlines. Make that skimmable. And then I think the action that you want people to take will be far more accessible and far more, than logical next step. Okay. So then I'll just go over this really fast. Your newsletter sign up is great. The only thing that I wish I would have seen are past newsletters. I don't like to sign up for things if I don't know what I'm signing up for. And if I'm already going to your site and reading your news, or if I see you don't really update it all that much and your newsletter is just a regurgitation of all the news I've probably already read, that's handy information. So I would just like to see that. And if I see your newsletter is really good, or it has something that your website doesn't, I'm much, much, much more likely to subscribe to it than just if I have to guess what's in it. And, again, I've said this 1,000 times already, but don't make people guess. Don't make people think. Tell them what something is and make it as clear as you possibly can. So I'm a little confused about exactly what membership means, and I'm a little not as confused of what a sponsor is, but I think for the purpose of this video, it's already long enough. We can skip those things. So let's just jump straight to the donation page. So like a lot of sites, this uses a third-party service called DonorBox, which for some reason is taking a long time to load right now. This happened to me one other time, and this is a big deal. I've got 160 meg internet here, and the fact that this is spinning, how many people give you a second chance? And more importantly, while this is trying to load, as a general rule of thumb for donate pages, what clicking on that donate button signals is an intent to give you money. In my opinion, it is important to pay off that intent as quickly and easily and simply as possible. Don't make people jump through hoops. Don't make people read a lot of words. Make it easy. Make it fluid. Remove as much friction from that experience as possible. Because I click on that donate button, I want to give you money. Make that as easy and simple and pleasant for me as you possibly can, and you're more likely to get that from me. Okay, now I can see that you're not using, or it doesn't seem like you're using one of the features of DonorBox, which I think is what makes it unique among third-party providers, in that you can actually state what donations are used for. So this is an example of DonorBox on a different site. Obviously, with the different funding levels, they're telling me what this can actually be used for. And more importantly, they're telling me in a way of where I can very clearly imagine what the difference is between these two, specifically the difference created with regard to impact. That's huge in that as a donor, again, I want to be able to see my donation working. I want to be able to understand, again, why I'm giving you money and exactly what that's going to be used for and how the world will be different because you and I got involved on this thing. Again, so that could be clearer here. And, I have to think that by specifying exactly what the different funding levels are, that naturally encourages people to go one level higher than they normally would have. The other thing I'd ask you is, do you really have people donating $1,000 through here? If you do, awesome. But if you've been using this for a while and the biggest donation you've gotten in the last year is $250, I might break these down a bit. I might do a you could still leave the 500 to have a ceiling. I might add another funding level of 25. But as far as this overall design goes, I mean, DonorBox is great and works great. That the only thing that I would look at is making sure it's actually tailored to what you're doing. And again, if you can add, exactly what each funding level does, that's awesome. The opt-in for the mailing list, I don't usually like these checked by default, but because it's so clear, I think it's fine. You are defaulting to one time instead of monthly. I think you can make an argument for doing this either way, but I think that one time is kind of the most transparent and kind of friendly way to do it. So I think that's great. So, okay, we go to the next page. Just your typical form. I use a password manager. So all that gets filled in. So all of that makes sense. And I'm just reloading this page to clear that form. And so this is doing this again. It's taking a while to load. I assume that something is either happening between me and DonorBox, which is one of the Achilles heel of having a third-party system, is you have another point of failure. Of, just like this, your entire website could be up and working great. If they're down, it's broken and people can't give you money. So with as easy as it is to build your own donation form, that's clearly one of the arguments for going that route. But you're already using DonorBox as your solution, so I think that's fine. So let's talk a second about what actually happens after donation. So let me go ahead and pull this up here. As far as the screen that pops up. So I actually did a donation. Here, let me get this out of full screen here. And so I did a donation, and this is what pops up. Boy, I sure would have liked to see additional content here. I sure would have liked to see, again, what impact will be created, what past donations have allowed you to do. Again, I've said this way too many times, but it's just there's some amount of work to be done here, again, with connecting these dots and making the impact a little bit more obvious. Now, the email that you send me is a bit better. It really gets into specifically, is more of it's kind of a longer thank you. You've got your tax ID in there. That's great. This is perfectly serviceable as a receipt. But again, I would sure love to have gotten an email from you thanking me and then talking about projects that donations like mine have helped you do. I sure would have loved to see some donor stories. That it's really easy as a nonprofit to communicate recipient stories. which are great, and I absolutely want to hear those sorts of things. But tell me some donor stories. Tell me how you've connected a donor with an opportunity to give, and how that's changed things on both sides. So anyhow, that's kind of banging the same drum that I've been banging the whole time. And then, so as far as the, the experience of the donation goes, because you're using DonorBox, that's great. Again, the only thing I worry about is if DonorBox is slow, it won't show up. And so again, you want to pay off this as quickly as you can. And I know you don't control this, but if it were me, I wouldn't break the form down to multiple pages. I can see why they do this, because they want to keep this big to be really touch friendly. But I think there's other ways you can solve this problem and keep your form on a single page so that you're not requiring multiple clicks. Again, you're paying off that intent to give as quickly as you can and not requiring me to just click. It's sort of the difference in the e-commerce world between a single page checkout and a multiple page. It's, I believe, proven that you can increase or you can decrease cart abandonment by going from multi-page to single page. Same here. If I've signaled the intent to you to give you money, help me pay that off as quickly as you can. So, okay. To sum up, again, the site is beautiful. You've put a lot of work into it. It's laid out even very clearly. I understand, your basic containers of content. I think I understand what you're trying to do. It's just if you could take it one step further and summarize things for me. Give me some headlines. I'd love some video. I'd love some stories of, again, show me a project before, during, after. Show me the impact of it, and really show me how donations like mine made this possible, and allow me to imagine future projects where donations like mine will help me understand and imagine how the future will be different, because I'm giving you this donation. And when you do that, you not only connect the dots for donors, but you really do the best of all possible worlds. You not only probably increase the size of the donation, but more importantly, you form a deeper relationship. That when you communicate clearly exactly how this is a partnership and how we are making a difference, that is a completely different level of relationship than basically just hitting me up whenever you're short on cash. So you're actually creating, a real human bond with an organization because you feel part of something. You feel that innate community drive to participate, because this is making things better, and this is making things better for people and things you care about. And when we communicate in those terms, again, we not only typically increase the donations that come in through our site, but far more importantly, we actually create the relationships with donors that we want to.